A teenage gunner captures a Spanish general, an empire shatters, and Colombia's heartbeat is born. Crack open Latin America's boldest secrets, fact-checked, footnoted, and irresistible. I'm Arturo, and this is Latin Lore. From Latin America's history to mysteries and true crime to local legends, whispering Latin intrigue, every tale is triple verified in archives before it reaches your headphones. Hit subscribe, fresh revelations drop every week. Ready for your next campfire debate. To every Colombian watching today, Feliz 7 de Agosto. 200 plus years ago, your ancestors, armed with little more than conviction, mud-caked boots, and a daring plan, altered the Western Hemisphere forever at a stone bridge in Boyacá. This is their story told as living lore, tense, relentless, and impossible to pause, because the stakes they faced still echo in every flag waved across Colombia this very morning. Boyacá smells of wet earth and pine resin when the mists descend. In that chill stillness of early 1819, scattered guerrilla lookouts swore they could hear the future breathing through the canyons. Spain's once almighty empire had ruled Nueva Granada for 3 centuries, yet its grip now slipped like rainwater through limestone, and somewhere in those vapors marched a Venezuelan Lanero army led by a gaunt, fever-eyed commander named Simón Bolívar, El Libertador, gambling everything on one last throw of the dice, cross the Andes, crack the viceroyal fortress at Bogotá, then hammer shut the royalist coffin before reinforcements could sail from Cadiz. Failure meant hangings in the glavering plazas, success meant birthing a republic, nothing in between. Across hill and valley skulked Colonel José María Barrero, a Spanish officer hardened by a decade of counterinsurgency. He trusted the backbone of old-world discipline, yet he could not read the fog. His columns dragged artillery wheels through trenches that melted under August rains, while indigenous muleteers murmured old Chibcha prayers to ward off the sickness that altitude brings. Somewhere ahead, invisible, Bolívar's columns stalked the same muddy arteries. Every hoofprint, every snap twig, every cloud bank felt like the intake of breath before a storm. Months earlier, 900 kilometers away on the Orinoco River, Bolívar had stood before the Congress of Angostura and vowed that popular sovereignty, not Bourbon decrees, would anchor a new society. His speech electrified patriots, yet chilled realists. Here was a commander who could fuse bayonets with ideals. Hungry for momentum, he scraped together a polyglot force. Venezuelan llaneros, New Granadan volunteers, Irish and Scottish adventurers, even former Spanish conscripts eager to switch flags for food and purpose. They gathered on the sun-blasted plains of Apure, where horses outnumbered men, trained under mirages and lightning storms, then set out across rivers that could swallow whole battalions in a single flood surge. The gamble was grotesque, to cross the Andes during the wet season when even condors hesitate. Yet Bolívar wagered that the Spanish commander Pablo Murillo, El Pacificador, would never expect such lunacy. Speed, shock, and topographic heresy would open the door to Bogotá. Nothing in soldiering equals the Páramo de Pisba, a kingdom of ice perched above the clouds. At daybreak, the troops clawed upward through switchbacks lined with spectral frailejones, their wool coats crusted white as cemetery marble, their lungs rasping for oxygen. Frost-cracked rifle stocks, pack mules skidded over cliffs. Men who had defied royal cannon now begged their saints for one more cup of panela broth. Death here was silent, no drum roll, just a slow folding into the snow. When they finally stumbled down into the emerald valleys of Boyacá, they left 400 dead to the mountain, but they also left fear behind. A force that survives Pisba believes itself invincible. Bolívar, face leathered by sleet, promised his skeletal columns that the worst was over. He lied, but they needed the lie, and they kept marching. July 25th, 1819. Pantano de Vargas was a morass where reeds hissed like serpents and every bootstep sank ankle deep. Barrero tried to bottle Bolívar's vanguard here, wagering swamp rot against rebel valor. For hours, musket volleys were muffled by mist, horses screamed, and the bog drank blood without ripples. In the chaos emerged Colonel Juan José Rondón, a llanero giant who rallied 14 cavalrymen with the immortal cry, "Coronel, salve usted la patria!" "Colonel, save the homeland!" They charged knee-deep through slush, lances finding royalist chests like pins in wax. The Spaniards reeled. Bolívar had proven his army could draw first blood on New Granadan soil, and the road to Tunja gaped open. Yet the Libertador knew Vargas was only the knife that pried the lid. The hammer stroke still awaited at a narrow bridge ahead. August 5th, Tuña's cobblestone lanes echoed with rebel cheers as Bolívar seized the provincial capital almost without a shot. While patriots raided warehouses for powder and uniforms, Bolívar unleashed a masterclass in psychological warfare. He let rumors ooze that his men were spent, that they would rest 2 weeks in Tunja, awaiting Casanare reinforcements. Barreiro swallowed the bait, steering his column south toward Bogotá by the longer Motavita route, believing time his ally. But Bolívar had already dispatched General Francisco de Paula Santander, el hombre de las leyes, to shadow the Spaniards. The trap was coiling. On the night of August 6th, the Patriot army ghosted out of Tunja, hugging ridgelines that screened them from royalist scouts. Campfires were banked under clay so no glow betrayed them. By dawn, they prowled the slopes above the Teatinos River, staring down at the Boyacá Bridge, 4 meters wide, built of stone destined for legend. High noon, August 7th. The Teatinos Canyon steamed like a cauldron, fog lapping the parapets. Barreiro's vanguard, 500 Spaniards and fellow traveler Americanos, reached the north bank first, muskets slung, expecting empty road. Instead, they glimpsed silhouettes on Cerro El Tobal, patriot skirmishers fanning out like hawks. Shots cracked, Spanish cazadores rushed uphill, only to collide with Colonel Joaquin Paris's hidden infantry. Barreiro realized too late that his army was split by the river. Half his strength still straggled a quarter league back. He ordered the vanguard to hold the Casa de Teja farmhouse south of the bridge, while he yanked the main body into a frantic double time. But the canyon funneled sound awkwardly. Drum signals echoed off cliffs, garbling commands. Fog turned friend to traitor, and coordination bled away. Santander's patriots surged. The British Legion rifles crashed against the Spanish center, bayonets flashing dull pewter. Lanero horsemen skirted the flank, their Lanura lances whistling. Spanish artillerists fired blind through vapor. Round shot whumped mud but found little flesh. Bolívar, astride a chestnut roan, read the field like a chessboard. Pin the royalist corps, annihilate the isolated vanguard, then turn full force upon Barreiro's tardy main. Downriver, a teenage fusilier, Pedro Pascasio Martínez, edged through ravines, musket primed. He was shoeless, clothes torn by brambles, but destiny favored ragged uniforms today. When smoke momentarily thinned, Martínez glimpsed a Spanish officer staggering along the bank, saber clutched uselessly. Barreiro himself, disoriented, abandoned by cavalry. Martínez leveled his musket. The general raised a gloved hand in surrender. In that heartbeat, the Spanish monarchy in Colombia lost its sword. Above, Santander forced the bridge. Patriot cavalry found a shallow ford, swept across and slammed into the royalist rear like thunder. Spanish columns tried to pivot, but muskets misfired, powder damp. A single rebel hurrah rolled the length of the canyon, morale shattered. Men who had marched under the Lion of Castile dropped weapons, some diving into Teatinos currents rather than face lances. By 4 p.m., the field lay silent save for groans and the hiss of rain on embers. Barreiro was hauled before Bolívar in twilight, mud streaking his epaulets. Legend says the Libertador removed his own cloak to drape over the captive, for even in victory he cherished the optics of magnanimity. Yet mercy had limits. Barreiro would face a firing squad months later after a royalist mutiny, a cautionary ghost in the birth of a nation. Patriot losses were light, 30 dead by some counts, 13 by others, while more than 1,600 royalists were killed or captured. But the statistic that mattered was psychological. Spain's aura of inevitability died on that bridge. Word galloped to Bogotá within 48 hours. Viceroy Juan de Samano, proud keeper of Bourbon order, bolted the palace in disguise, green ruana, wide hat, leaving ledger books fluttering like condemned doves. By dawn, August 9th, he was racing for Cartagena, and the colonial audiencia scattered behind him. No siege, no barricade, just a sudden vacuum-sucking marble statues and royal seals into irrelevance. Historian Victor Uribe Uran later called it a uniquely bloodless state collapse. Bolívar entered Bogotá on August 10th to pealing church bells. Merchants unfurled tricolor banners improvised from grain sacks. Children painted mustaches on broken Spanish helmets. Santander was named vice president, tasked with turning rebel chaos into republican law. Behind them, the British press declared Spain shorn of its sword arm in America, and investors sniffed opportunity. Within 3 years, Gran Colombia floated its first London loan, financed by the very empire that once armed its oppressor. Across the Atlantic, Boyacá's shockwave tipped diplomatic scales. When the Monroe Doctrine surfaced in 1823, forbidding Europe from recolonizing the hemisphere, it drew moral weight from Boyaca's proof that Creole republics could actually win. Peru's plowmen, Chile's miners, Mexico's rancheros all saw in Boyacá a precedent written in mud and courage. Even Spain, reeling from Napoleonic aftershocks, sensed the inevitability. Cadiz liberals whispered that perhaps America was gone for good. Perhaps the Bourbon gaze should pivot homeward. Boyacá had done what rhetoric alone could not. It made imperial recolonization look prohibitively expensive. Yet inside Colombia, the battle's afterlife would be more intimate. Benedict Anderson spoke of imagined communities built on shared myths. Boyacá became Colombia's lodestone myth. Every August 7th, cadets parade across the preserved bridge, their boots clicking where muskets once sparked. School children recite the names Rondón, Paris, Martinez, as if kin. Diplomats lay wreaths. Veterans of newer wars tuck service ribbons under the stones. Debate keeps the story alive. Revisionist scholars like Charles S. Daile emphasize Spanish tactical misfires, while environmental historian Claudia Leal argues that fog, altitude, and hunger were as decisive as rifles. These layers do not dilute heroism. They texture it, reminding modern Colombians that victory was brewed from geology, rainfall, and human grit alike. So why does a 19th century skirmish remain front-page news every anniversary? Because Boyacá is not a fossil, it is a contract, renewed annually between citizen and republic. When children wave tricolor flags on Avenida Septima, they echo the moment indigenous archers, mestizo muleteers, and Afro-Colombian drummers forged unity in the furnace of battle. The monarchy's collapse proved that sovereignty could sprout from consensus, not lineage. Contemporary Colombia, scarred by civil wars, narcotic violence, and political polarization, looks back to Boyacá as evidence that fragmented regions can still cohere when danger demands. Cultural anthropologist Margarita Marin told EFE in 2023, Boyacá isn't about glory, it's about consensus. The nation takes her cue. Each August 7th, the bridge becomes therapy, a reminder that the republic endures when its people, however conflicted, pull together. Night settles over the Teatinos Gorge the same way it did in 1819, drawing silver threads through pine needles and smoothing muskets into rumor. Tourists depart, cicadas resume their vigil. Somewhere a teenage cadet stares at the moonlit parapets and imagines Pedro Pascasio Martínez leveling that musket. He wonders whether he will ever do anything half as brave. The answer, Colombia tells him, is yes, because bravery now wears new uniforms. Teachers in Choco classrooms, doctors ferrying vaccines up Magdalena tributaries, environmentalists shielding the Páramo Bolívar once crossed. Independence is no longer seized. It is maintained day by stubborn day. That is why Colombians celebrate Boyacá. Not to gloat, not to preserve relics, but to remind themselves and the watching world that a republic born in fog and desperation still breathes, still argues, still hopes. The bridge stands as both monument and mirror, stone arches reflecting each generation's duty to keep the covenant alive. So on this August 7th, raise a cup of steaming tinto, salute the Llanero's ghostly trumpet blasts, and remember that a boy with bare feet and a calm trigger finger once rewrote hemispheric history right here. Happy Boyacá de Colombia. May your bridge of destiny forever carry the weight of freedom across its timeless span. Thanks for trekking the hidden trails of Latin America with me. Drop your theories below, and until then, keep the legends alive and the facts on fire. I am Arturo, and this is Latin Lora. If tonight's story unsettled you, subscribe and ring the bell, because Latin America's darkest stories are far from over.